I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ayana Johnson. I'm the Senior Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Employee Experience. That's a mouthful of a title at Ampersand. And before we get started, I just wanted to make a few quick announcements, and then we'll jump right in. This session will be recorded and shared via email with all registrants. During the discussion, we'd love to hear from you. So we're hoping that we use the stage chat on the right to your screen to send messages, comments, and questions to panelists or to one another. Now we're excited to really talk about what we're here for today. Mentorship Matters, Empowering Women in Leadership, sponsored by Ampersand. So for those who do not know, Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Millions of women visit Fairygodboss for career connections, jobs, community advice. Hard to find intel about how companies treat women in virtual events, just like the one we're at now. I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleagues and fellow AMPs. We have Rita, we have Rachel, and we have Jessica, and you'll hear about each one of them. They'll introduce themselves. So would you all take a minute? I'll kind of say who goes, and we'll go from there. Are we excited? Are we ready? We're ready, Pin? All right, cool. So Rita, we'll start with you. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rita Ceballos. I'm a Senior Adults Manager and have been with Ampersand for 8 years. I am a proud mom of 2 amazing cats, David Bowie and Stevie Nicks, who just turned 1. Professionally, I help improve operations so that we're supporting the business every day in every way. And I'm a major component of my job of staff development and team building.
Thank you, Rita. Rachel, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Rachel. I've been at Ampersand for almost a year, overseeing data innovation. I lead a team of technical and analytical client consultants, and our team handles in-house product solutions and partners with brands to understand the best strategic activations for their investments.
Perfect. And Jessica, do you mind taking us home?
Sure. I'm Jessica Harris. I am a Director of Sales in the Chicago office. So I lead a sales team here at Ampersand that focuses on helping the brands reach their strategic audiences across an ever-fragmented multi-screen environment. We work with national agencies in partnership to kind of help connect their clients with the right audience whenever, wherever, and however they're consuming premium television content. Been here for about 10 years. I am married with a 6-year-old daughter, and I live in the North Chicago suburbs.
Thank you very much, panelists. So I'm going to take a second and just look at the chat. We have a bunch of people here from different places. We've got Connecticut, we've got San Diego, Arizona's here. We've got some California folks. We got some New York folks, Santa Barbara. All right, so I'm excited. We have a lot of different people here from a bunch of different places. So I just want to thank our panelists for introducing yourself. I'm excited about our discussion today. And for those just tuning in, I'd like to remind everyone that we'll be answering your questions as well. So if you are inclined to ask a question at any point, please put it in the chat. We'll get it highlighted and we'll make sure that it gets answered from the panel, given the time we have. So panelists, are we ready to jump right in? Fantastic. So as the today's event suggests, we're here to talk about how mentorship has impacted your career and learn more about how it's affected your growth as a leader. We often hear about the role mentors can play in supporting and advocating for career advancement. What are your thoughts on the role as a mentor can have in career enrichment? And how has having a mentor or sponsor or being a mentor or sponsor enriched your own working experience? So Jess, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll kind of work our way around.
Sure. I think it's interesting because you use 2 words together, mentor and sponsor, and sometimes they're interchangeable. But I think it's really good to kind of focus on what each word connotates. So a mentor is somebody that kind of invests in you as an individual. So they're there for your knowledge to help grow yourself. A sponsor is kind of advocating for you, vouching for you. And that's something that you can't go into it thinking you're going to get a sponsor. I think if you go into that mentor relationship and you kind of prove yourself and they're directly related to your business line, they can become a sponsor for you. And I think that it's important to keep trying to collect as many mentors as possible to have knowledge, and then you'll have a kind of a board of directors of sponsorship to help you in your career. Because at the end of the day, you're asking someone to share their time, to share their work, to share their experience, their network with you. And you have to be willing to do the work the same way. So you want to pay it forward. So I think that if you're looking to get a mentor, I think it's important to look and say, how am I mentoring other people? And you don't have to be at a leadership position at your organization. You can be an entry-level position and you're mentoring people from college. You can have just started your role 6 months ago, and you're going to be the one that is that person that a new hire feels comfortable asking questions to. So if you create yourself as a curious person and willing to nurture other people, that's going to help connect you with other mentors, because they're going to recognize that in you, and they're going to see that that's going to be kind of a collaborative relationship, and that's ultimately going to be the most enrichment for your career.
Thanks so much, sir. Very strong start. Love that. Rach, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. I like the differentiation between sponsorships and mentorships because you don't always think about it that way. And you're right that they get used interchangeably all the time, some of which makes sense and some of which totally doesn't, because you're dealing with two people with totally different career paths that don't really understand yours. So when I was first joining the corporate world, a family friend gave me the advice to identify a female mentor. And at the time, I didn't understand the importance of this, how it would shape my future years, personally, professionally, had no idea. So initially I felt lucky I could rely on my older sister, and she's not in our industry, but she's a source of support that eventually led me to be able to pinpoint leadership and general workplace qualities that I respected and hoped to embody on my own. And therefore, on the flip side, identify what kind of leadership and, workplace qualities I don't want to embody. So over time, with that support, I was fortunate to have a handful of trusted coworkers and leaders that had been foundational in my own development. And I was most influenced through osmosis in the workplace. So to Jessica's point, my mentors also became sponsors in ways that I didn't really realize were happening. So I was trained on executive presence, concise client presentations, as well as being pushed to just be introspective and understanding what I was looking for in the next steps of any of my roles, which was enriching for me. And then in turn, because I was being encouraged and because I had this type of sponsorship, which I didn't know was happening, I believe I was able to pay it forward to more junior level coworkers in an organic way as well. And I genuinely enjoy being around people and being able to identify progress in myself and others. And that's been super rewarding and motivating over time.
Fantastic. And Rita, you want to give us your thoughts as well?
Of course. And to align with Jessica and Rachel as well, I feel a mentor provides guidance and support that can help you identify your strengths and weaknesses, setting goals and developing the skills and knowledge needed to achieve those goals. A mentor's so important and provides valuable feedback and perspective and helps to see you from a different angle and gain insight to your own performances and potentials. Additionally, for me, a mentor helps you connect the values and resources, right? Industry contacts, training opportunities, and career development programs that you yourself may not know where to get that information. And kind of to answer your second question, for me, mentorship allowed for a guiding light, what felt like a dark tunnel a long time when I first started work. I had difficulty making decisions when navigating my career path. And I contribute a lot of my success, especially here at Ampersand, to my two mentors that I had. Not just because under their leadership I was able to be promoted, but because they saw my strength and potential. But more importantly, they knew also my weaknesses and were able to help me grow and develop to become a stronger career individual.
I love that. I just want to say we're at a very strong start. Okay. This is going great. So I'm going to pivot to our next question. So how did you find your mentor or mentors, right? And I think we have mentors at different phases of our careers. So just maybe pick one or just give an example. And what qualities did you look for when you were searching for a mentor? So Rach, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll work our way around.
Yep. So for me, fortunately, it came somewhat naturally from work experiences. There was no program that I joined in any formulaic way. I've been really lucky to have strong bonds with colleagues and industry friends. And over time, I realized that some of those connections turned into mentorships and, to my previous point, therefore then sponsorships. But I was often seeking guidance as my one-time job began turning into a career. And, it was important for me to surround myself with mentors and just people that understood me as a person, both in and out of work. So for someone to understand, to Rita's point, strengths and weaknesses and just general objectives. My career goals were definitely not super defined when I first started working, and they continue to evolve. So I was most influenced by those that supported me and also challenged me because they knew me. And then, these qualities take time and trust needs to develop. So aside from the mentors like my sister that are outside the industry, the mentors in my life that stemmed from the industry were definitely not immediate. They evolved and they continue to grow over time.
Thank you very much. Rita, what are your thoughts on, how did you find your mentor and what qualities were you looking for?
Yeah, no, I think in line with Rachel, by sheer luck, my mentors organically came into my life as well. To be honest, I didn't have an understanding of what it meant to have a mentor in my professional life until I got to Ampersand. In my experience, I also didn't understand that there would be people outside my family who cared about my career growth. When I got to Ampersand, it truly felt like a fresh breath there. I immediately felt like I was being seen for the first time in my career. And not to say that in previous employments I didn't do well or there wasn't enriching programs. It just felt like I was coming out of that dark tunnel where I didn't feel like I just had a job anymore. I was actually building a career, and I was starting to understand through my mentors what it meant to do that.
Fantastic. So obviously, as we go, I'll ask some people to speak, and everybody, not everybody, just in the essence of time. But if you have something to say, please let me know, and we'll definitely make space for you. So I'm gonna go to the next question, and I'm gonna start with you, Jess. Can you share some specific examples of how your mentor or mentors have helped you navigate challenges in your own career? Or you can look at it from a mentee perspective. Just overall, how they helped you, navigating those difficult situations or conversations.
Yeah, I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got from a mentor, and this was somebody that was my manager, and then I left the organization, but I stayed in touch with him to kind of, talk through career aspirations, and I was feeling kind of stuck. And he talked to me about the jungle gym approach to your career, which is that it's not always a straight line. So I was like an assistant buyer, then I was a buyer, then I was a sales account executive. And how do I get to be the director? How do I get to be a team manager? And he was saying that sometimes you have to go lateral, or you have to go lateral and even back if the organization that you're going to is going to help you grow more, so that you can't always be thinking about how do I get that next step, but like plot it 4 steps in advance to how we do it on a jungle gym, right? Where sometimes it's not a ladder straight to the top, but you kind of have to go sideways or down or figure out your handholds. And so that was like a really great kind of like overall how I navigate my career. And then one of my official mentors here at Ampersand, I had joined the mentorship program. He kind of taught me how to approach blocks from a business perspective. So, I lead a sales team and I have issues and I have problems and I want to fix things. And I try and say like, hey guys, you need to do this because that will help us. And I wasn't always getting through. And he doesn't come from the sales at all. He comes from the finance department. And he was saying that you can't approach this from what's good for you or even what's good for your team. You have to think about it like what's good from the company, and thinking about like, why does it make business sense for the company to fix it this way? And just kind of doing that pivot in my asks has allowed me to make a lot more progress with different initiatives or goals or things that I want to have accomplished. And I've been able to pay that forward to some mentees in the She Runs It program, because one of them was feeling stuck in her career. And I was saying, rather than kind of say, I deserve this, or this is why I need to move up, or I don't have this position anymore, to show the value in the organization about why a new position should be created and how much time it would save and how much it would help. So those are like 2 kind of great advice nuggets that I've taken, and I've been able to use them in a variety of different ways.
Fantastic. I love that. So I'm going to jump into the next question. How do we approach setting goals with your mentor, and what metrics do you use to measure progress? I'm going to go, Jesse, you want to go with that one?
Gosh.
So I just feel like you were on a roll, so I just wanted to catch you. You kind of talked about it.
No, this is one that I'm not great with this. So,
yeah.
it's not all like you go into this mentorship program and they're like, you need to have goals, you need to have your kind of what you're looking to accomplish. And I started, thinking that I didn't know what I wanted to kind of do as my next step. And so my mentorship has always kind of gotten away from the goals. Like, I don't have specific benchmarks necessarily, but I always make sure that I'm going into each meeting prepared. So I don't ever just log on and say, hey, what's going on kind of thing. At least not at the start. I would be writing down questions or issues throughout the period of time leading up to the meeting, and make sure that I wasn't wasting their time with it. And that's with the formal mentorship programs where we had like a set cadence. I've never stopped doing those meetings. I kind of like told them that I was still wanted to keep continuing those conversations. So now, like years out past the program's official end date, sometimes we are just logging in to kind of talk and get an update and see what our beat is on everything. But I would be eager to hear what other people say, because this is definitely something that I should probably improve in.
Cool. Rich, do you want to take it?
Sure. Again, because I was never part of a formal program, it was much more of an evolution for me. And I was challenged more from my mentors, really asking, what's going on? You don't really seem happy right now. What can we do differently? So not necessarily a goal that I was putting forthright, but more so making me be more introspective and realize, okay, this might not be a goal, a month from now, but I know that I need to continue learning. I know that I'm getting complacent. I know that I need some kind of collaboration, innovation in my life to make me not want to be miserable when I'm going into work every day. So there, less of goal setting, but much more of communication and just being pushed a little bit beyond my comfort zone for me to be able to understand what's going to make me more driven and more ambitious.
Love that. Rita, did you want to add anything? Okay, just want to make sure. But here's the thing. So I'm gonna take a pivot, and I'm gonna. There's a question in the chat, Rita, that I would love if you had feedback on. So it says, "What advice?" Carmen Davila says, "What advice would you give to someone who's mid to late career and has never had a mentor or a sponsor, would like to have one now?"
I definitely think that if in your place of employment that you could find someone who has a lot of what you're looking for. I think to really look at it and say, what do I look for in my career? What am I looking for in maybe getting that support? Someone you emulate, someone you're seeing, I think is important, right? And if it's not in your career, then like leveraging other forms of LinkedIn, anything else. I kind of think it goes into even like the next question that was on the list of things that we're talking about, right? Leveraging LinkedIn is a great way to start to connect with people and expand your network. I think LinkedIn is a great platform to learn about relevant industry updates in your own industry, outside of your industry, kind of keeping that open, and events that you can attend, right? There's so many people in the industry who are and would make mentors, looking to see who has time and wants to dedicate that time to you to just talk about what the progress of the business has been like, what's the future of it, And I think lastly, seeking out people who understand your strengths and weaknesses. I think simply put, I saw people and said, wow, I would really like to be like that person in my own career.
Yeah, I think that's great. And just to add, as someone that's, works in HR and we listen to find a company or go to your HR team and say, hey, this is what we want as a company, or this is what I think will be beneficial. And I find that those departments are like, if you have learning and development departments that are geared towards the employee experience, reaching out to them and just asking, hey, do we have any type of mentorship program internally or externally that you know of? Like, we have different partners that we work with that have mentorship programs as well. It's all about just asking your company what they offer, and you'll find that there are a lot of different like pockets of things that are available and you just don't know.
I think also one of the things that you can do is not necessarily approach it like what's in it for you. If you see people that you admire or see people that are in roles that you want to learn more about, just ask if you can set up some time and put 15, 30 minutes on their calendar and start making those connections. Now, not everybody, and you don't have to go into it saying, I want you to be my mentor, I want you to devote all this time. you just come at it from a curious perspective and saying, I want to learn a little bit about you. And sometimes it'll just be that, and then you'll move on to the next. But I think if you approach it where you're always trying to learn about people, and then let that kind of organically help you with your career and see, is this person going to be a good fit for me? And you kind of get that sort of rhythm in those conversations on, is this going to be somebody that's going to really help me develop and learn, versus somebody that, might not have the time at that point in their career to nurture somebody else. And then you kind of just move on. But you just, it's just kind of like a speed dating approach, but you can actually get something from everybody, even if they're not going to become a mentor.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I think people think that you have to somebody has to be in this position to learn something from them, but mentorship happens everywhere.
Yeah, I think the mistake is to not seek that relationship or relationships. And I think in my personal experience, I wasn't doing that because I didn't understand that's what it was. And I think just taking a seat and not thinking about how do I make these relationships, because people truly do care. Not everyone, but you seek people who would care and want to help you out. And to Jessica's point, it doesn't have to be one person. It could be multiple people at work or in other places that you're finding those resources.
Fantastic. Someone else in the chat asked how large of a team Ampersand is. I think we're at 5. I think our headcount is 574. Don't quote me, but I want to say we're around 574 fantastic amps across the country. So yeah, I'm going to go to our next question. And, does Ampersand have any formal programs in place for mentors or sponsorships, or is it more a casual thing that happens organically? Rach, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I mean, I think Jessica kind of alluded to it previously, but Ampersand does have a formal program in place. As I mentioned, I've never been a part of one before, so I'm super excited to be involved in this year's project at Ampersand. And, I've never, again, I think I've organically had mentees in the past. It has not been a formalized process where we have set time aside and stuff like that. So I wonder how it'll be different for me in learning for my own development of being a mentor, and seeing how I can, evolve my skill sets and stuff like that. But again, based on, I think, all of our experiences, I think mentorships or sponsorships can definitely be built organically for some. So whether or not you're in a real program or formalized anything, there's always opportunity. So just be aware of your surroundings and be open to it.
Jess, do you want to give your thoughts on our program?
Yeah, so Ampersand, so we've had 2 different programs. So a few years ago, there was the initial mentorship program that was launched, and it was just anybody could apply to it. And then they had a committee that kind of matched people up, and it was you could apply as a mentor or mentee. So I had applied to be a mentee because I was new in my role. And then they're launching a pilot program where this was kind of a select sort of small group invite opportunity, and that's where now I'm a mentor in that role. So we've had both of those, but then also at the previous program when I applied and I got my mentor, I had mentioned to somebody else that I was in the program and they were in the program, and I was like, could you be my mentor too, because I was loving for the opportunity. So I kind of organically asked her to kind of help me along the lines as well. And so that is my monthly call that I have with her, and I have my biweekly call still with my mentor. And that was several years ago. And now I've got the new call with my new mentee. And then, yeah, so I mean, both, I guess, is the short answer to that question.
Yes. And just HR. Just usually so the mentorship program at Ampersand is a pilot. We're running our first pilot program for those that don't know. So we are being very intentional. We built a curriculum of different activities for our mentees. So it's a 6-month program that we started off small just to see if it works, right? Because I think there's a lot of different ways you can go about mentorship, and it could be this, hey, this is your mentor, figure it out yourselves, or it can be a little more structured, or it can be something in between. So our hope is that this pilot will give us an idea of what amps are looking for, so we can build a larger program for the needs of everybody. What resources or tools do you recommend for women who want to expand in their network or seek out new mentorship opportunities? Rita. How'd you like to kick that off for us?
No, it was kind of like the question we received from the panel. I definitely think LinkedIn is a great resource. Searching within your own company and industry to find people who are willing to take time to talk to you about how the business has changed and where it goes. Like I said, I think it's important to find people who see your strength and more importantly are willing to want to work you through your weaknesses so you can challenge yourself in ways that you're not challenging yourself and really figure out what your career path is, and not like I did for a long time previously to join Ampersand, where I felt like I just had a job and I would go and I thought this was what it was, right? I worked, I was in corporate job and that was great, but I didn't have a built out career path. And I think through being mentored, that's what really helped me out, was to find someone, or in more than one person actually, to be able to say, here's what that path, recommendations, what do you really want to do? And to help me solidify this ever evolving process. Because it's not like, I know now exactly what I want to do in 10 years. I have I thought of what that would look like, but more importantly, that's what I'm building the steps to what my career and what I want. And I'm having someone help me develop that.
Fantastic. Rachel, what are your thoughts?
I think, there are obviously platforms, there are tons of books, there are podcasts, there are tons of female leaders out there. But ultimately, they may not be the right fit, as I honestly think it's a pretty personal journey. When you're first starting out, or I'll speak for me, when I first started out working in the corporate world and was given the advice to find a female mentor, I didn't care. Like, I didn't know what that would mean for me. I had no idea. So over time, I think if that's something important for you, again, I think a major theme here has been be a little bit introspective and understand what matters to you at any given moment. But the best advice is that you need to want to have a mentor. And then, regardless of how you find them, whether it be a program that's made for you or something more organic, instill trust in them. Be willing to take the constructive guidance as well as the support. It's not always going to be pretty. And in finding that mentor, keep your eyes out. Again, it could be a family member. It could be somebody you met, in college that just pops up again in your life. You never know. So I think that situations are very transferable. So even if it's somebody outside the industry, things are not, it's not a one size fits all situation. I have a very good friend that's a chef. We are in very different worlds. A lot of our situations are very translatable. So, understanding what you need and being open to finding it in different platforms, whether that be, social media, friends and family, a book, a podcast, anything like that.
I'll also chime in to say, look into professional organizations as well. There's a lot of different groups out there. So I'm a member of She Runs It, which is geared towards the advertising media community. And they have a mentorship program twice a year that they do. So if you're looking for a more formal program versus just trying to identify an individual person, look into professional organizations, and you can do your homework and kind of find out if they have something like that before you want to cough up your membership dues.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say there's a question, Justin. I think this is the correct answer. So someone asked, are you aware of any organizations that mentor women looking for jobs, career transitions, and new positions, et cetera? So you would say, because you've worked with She Runs It, that organization, that's a great one that meets all those needs, right?
Yes, definitely. And I don't know off my top of my head of other organizations, but if you are in any kind of peripheral marketing, creative, sales, in that kind of media sphere, that's a great organization. But I would definitely search about it. Like, you could literally Google your kind of career focus and say professional organizations, and something's going to come up.
I'm also going to chime in that Fairygodboss also is one of those organizations. Just saying it not because we're here, but because I get the emails, right? where they have a lot of different career advice. They have a lot of different job openings, and they do a lot of different work with organizations. They partner with organizations to really like give a lot of information for what people have. So that's a good one. She Runs, it's a good one. Like Jess said, you can literally Google anything. If you've ever been in a Greek organization, they do a lot of like networking events. If you've ever any type of like LinkedIn is a really good hub for spaces, but Google is one of those places where you can find a lot of information about everything, for sure. I'm going to jump into the next question. Rita, we're going to start us off. How can mentorship relationships evolve and adapt over time as career and circumstances change?
Yeah, I feel like it's like any other relationship, right? You need to dedicate time and be willing to listen to each other. And I think, as Rachel even said, like take the good with the bad, right? That this is what that relationship is to help grow you and learn things about yourself and to be challenged, to be honest, fostering and growing the relationship. And with time, your goals will change and the guidance will eventually naturally evolve as well. My goal is to always, manage the relationship. I want to make sure that I'm showing that I'm dedicated to this relationship. And it's my responsibility as a mentee to continue the conversation as I evolve in my career. Good mentors are not just there to tell you what to do, but they're really there to show you and grow you and help you develop.
Fantastic. Jess, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, just staying in touch, especially if you are in kind of a professional sort of like organized mentor program that has a start and end date, to keep that conversation going no matter what. And even if they don't have the time to devote that 30 minutes on their calendar, every other week, to just do those kind of check-ins, make yourself the kind of reminder on your Outlook to reach out and see what's going on. And then I think also, especially if you're in the mentee role, over time, don't discount the value that you can bring to your mentor. So especially if you aren't in the specific vertical that they're in, they might be asking you questions about things that are happening or getting your perspective. So if you think that, in order to be a good mentee, that you've got to be curious and you've got to be helpful to other people, that's the same qualities that a mentor has. They should be curious. They should be wanting to learn and evolve. And if we think that like a great career is where you approach it as an opportunity to never stop learning, that applies to both you and your mentor and can always be the case no matter where you are in your career.
Absolutely. I just want to add, if you're a mentee, don't be nervous about sending the follow-up email. And working with mentees, I've learned that like they send one and then it's like, oh, they never got back to me. But I was like to remind people are busy, right? So just send a little nudge. Hey, just following up on this. It goes a long way. It absolutely goes a long way. So I'm going to ask, Fairygodboss has a tradition of asking panelists the following. What do they observe that women do not feel comfortable enough bragging or taking ownership of all the amazing things that they achieved? Share with us an accomplishment, professional or personal, that you're most proud of. So brag about yourself for a second. I'm going to start with Rachel.
I'll stick to the professional for the moment, but I'm proud of my ability to pivot professionally. I started out in a much different role as a 22-year-old out of college, knowing nothing about this industry, and kind of navigated my way to where I am now, which I'm pretty proud of. And I'm, throughout that time, I've realized that I am confident in what I know and I'm confident when I don't know. And obviously, to our conversation earlier, there are tools to get you into different places in your career. For me, it was taking a step back, feeling some burnout, understanding where I needed to learn to become less complacent, took a bunch of classes, learned some new skill sets, was able to then understand where in my day-to-day role I could iterate on to use, any new development that I've had personally. So understanding that I needed to continue learning, and then with that, being able to pave way to build teams, which has been really, really rewarding for me. Again, partly due to the sponsorship and mentors that I've had in my previous roles. But just understanding, the pivot and then understanding what is important for me has been really effective and really important for me in the past few years, and especially I believe will be moving forward.
Thank you for sharing. Rita, tell me what you got.
I personally struggle with this question because I feel like I am one of those individuals. I struggle professionally with getting positive feedback of any type. And I think for me, professionally, I feel it's been being promoted to being a manager and then a senior manager. I love that I can be an advocate. I know we've talked about this of not only feeling like we're mentees for me, but how do I mentor? And I think as a senior manager, I feel like I've gotten that ability to be able to be a leader and give direction based on my experience. And personally, I feel like I'm a first generation Guatemalan, and I think making my parents proud has been personal accomplishment for me. My parents have worked really hard and sacrificed a lot, and I feel like through my professional accomplishments, their hard work and sacrifices aren't going in vain. And more importantly, because they were my first mentors, showing me what really having good work ethic and working through adversity really looks like.
I love that. Jess, tell us what you got.
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's kind of dovetailing into personal, but there was a book that my daughter has called Dear Girl, and it's like all these kind of messages to girls as they grow up. And one of the sayings in there is, keep that hand raised, you've got important things to say. And that's something that my mom kind of instilled in me and, gave me that confidence to always raise my hand in class and to advocate and to think that, of course, people want to know my opinion. And I realized that didn't always happen for other people. And so making sure that my daughter feels that as well. We just got back from a parent-teacher conference, and she definitely has that kind of innate confidence in her. She will ask the questions and challenge authority. And so we probably got to work on a little bit of the tact and the time and the place. But knowing that, being a confident girl that doesn't feel afraid to speak their mind and to believe that they do have important things to say and that they should ask questions, knowing that I've been able to kind of pass on that legacy from my mom to my daughter. And that's just from being hopefully a strong woman as well, both personally and professionally. I think that gives me the most pride at the end of the day.
I love the quote, keep that hand raised. You got a lot of stuff to say. I love that. So I'm going to pivot to we said pivot a lot, right? I'm going to pivot to the chat. Marty has a question. Marty Shalada has a question. He said, can you share some experiences you've had while mentoring? How have you been able to help mentors? What have you gained from the experience? I think someone mentioned before that we don't really think about mentors, it being a benefit for mentors, right? To have mentees. So anyone can start.
Yeah, so right now in She Runs It, I've got 2 mentees, and they're both at different points in their career. So one is kind of starting out in campaign management, one is an account executive, but they're both on the national side of business. So on my team at Ampersand, we are in the local market. So that's a designated market area, DMA. So we sell Chicago, or we sell New York, or we sell St. Louis, versus a network advertiser where you buy ESPN across the entire country. So they're both from that line. So I've really enjoyed learning from them. We've been able to see, because they're both in different roles, that the account executive is able to give advice to the campaign manager as well, where I can't always. So yeah, I just love to learn about different jobs and organizations and how they navigate things, burnout, return to office. Like, these are all kind of issues where you don't want to stay in your tunnel and only hear things from your own company. But that's been super valuable for me.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. While this was not a formal mentor-mentee relationship, there was somebody in a previous role that I hired that did not know what, anything in media was. He did not know what an impression was. He was a math teacher. It was a high school math teacher. And I knew, again, to my point, I was confident in my understanding of the media space, and I knew the complementing skill sets that I would need on the other side. So in that relationship, I was training him on what I needed, and he was training me on what he knew. And it was a very complementary, again, I don't know if I would really say it was a mentor-mentee relationship, but at any given moment, it was a seesaw. So working with complementary skill sets and understanding you don't have to be the smartest in the room. You don't have to know everything. Just keep your ears open, listen a little bit, and be willing to learn what may be really beneficial for you in the future.
Love it. Rita, you got anything? All right, that's cool. I like that. So let's talk about difficult conversations. So how do you handle this? And this is for anyone. How do you handle situations where your mentor's advice conflicts with your own values or beliefs? And we could say from a mentor, right, or even if you have a mentee or you've been a mentee, either position.
I can speak on being a mentee because it happens. And I think for me, when that happens, I have to self reflect. I have to self reflect of what about the advice, what about what I'm being asked or told is really causing me to feel like I can't connect. Because I know that in the relationship, it's the challenging part, right? This person is helping me define, helping me grow. Why do I feel like it's a challenging thing? And if I feel a certain way, even after that reflection, I come back to the conversation, having weighed all the options, how it makes me feel, why would they say that, and to continue having the conversation, right? Like your mentor isn't necessarily always right about everything, right? That's why it's about nourishing and developing the relationship. You're having these conversations, and you can come to them and say, hey, this is what I feel about what you said and why why I don't align with it, and continuing it until it kind of just softens itself out to what it really needs to be and the next steps you need to take.
Yeah, I'll quickly add to that too. I think the foundation of that is trust, right? You're building a relationship with somebody, and it's not always going to be the information that you want back, and that's okay. As a mentor, I think you have to realize that you're not the only source of truth. And as a mentee, hopefully your mentor is speaking from some kind of past experience that they are thinking is to your benefit. So it's okay not to agree. I think it's, just listen, take it in, digest. It may allow you to have a different perspective than you previously had. But, even if it's just a little bit of time and a little bit of different perspective of just let it in and see if there's anything that you can learn from it. You don't have to do exactly what they say.
I love that. And then, Jess, you have anything before I go to the next question? Yeah, I just want to add, also, if you're doing like a formal mentorship program, like within your job, reach out to whoever's running it, because there are times, right, where we don't have to manage difficult conversations on our own. So there are definitely resources out there on how to navigate rough conversations. Because I always like to keep in mind that sometimes, great intent doesn't always have the best output. So take care of yourself, right? And take care of your space, and make sure that you have support and you have people that you can talk to about, hey, like, I don't really know how I feel about this, and get good feedback. My next question, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced as a woman in leadership, and how did mentorship help you overcome them?
I think, there's a meme out there of a little girl like going like this at somebody, and it's like, it's not being bossy, it's leadership skills. And I think that, there are different verbs that sometimes go with women that are direct and have strong opinions versus men. And I think it's okay to be aware of that. I don't think that you should necessarily change the way that you talk. I don't think that you should become passive because you don't want to be that, the shrill, bossy person. Mm-hmm. I think it's just important that if you're starting to have conflicts with anybody, or you're starting to see those blocks, to recognize it, to not be afraid to have that conversation and say, I feel like you're perceiving that I am being aggressive in this situation. And take that step back, explain yourself. But I think that, that the idea of unconscious bias comes from anywhere, whether it's race, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's man, women, anything. So I think just to really make sure that you are informed about the way that other people might be perceiving you, and that will help you kind of address those issues. I don't think you should change unless you get honest feedback that, actually this would be bad if you were a man or a woman. But just to be aware that sometimes people view things differently.
All of that. So I want to talk about this term imposter syndrome that has come up so many times in so many ways. And folks might not know what it means. So if anyone wants to kind of take the first grab at it, and then so explaining, like, in your opinion, what is imposter syndrome? But can you share some strategies for overcoming imposter syndrome and self-doubt in leadership positions?
Yeah, I'll take that. So the way that I would define imposter syndrome is feeling as though you're not good enough to be in the room that you may be sitting in. That's a very, generalized definition. So I'm sure Google would have a better one. But, it's just feeling as though you don't belong and you're the imposter in a situation. So I think that everybody has a little bit of self-doubt. And if you don't, then you should probably re-examine yourself at some point. And I think that's totally normal, especially at any development point in your career where maybe there's a change or you're learning something different or, any evolution. But the strategies I would say for overcoming it is really just like it's like an overarching theme here. So apologies for sounding like a broken record, but understand what you know and what you don't know. Be introspective, take a moment to realize where you can, outshine maybe the person sitting to your left, even if they outshine you in every other way, because that's where you believe that you are at that moment. It's more of there's a reason why you're there. And most likely every single person in that room can see that except for you. So it's really just take a moment to breathe, relax, understand that there's something that you have to offer. Again, that's a little bit vague, but I think everybody kind of goes through their own journey, and it's keeping your hand raised. It's understanding where you can find outside resources that might help you overcome those 2 weeks of time where that's where you're feeling. So I don't know. I think a major theme for me is just relax, breathe, understand what you know, understand what you don't know, and use your resources effectively.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that, when it comes to applying for jobs, that men will apply for jobs that they're not qualified for at a much higher rate than women, where we try to look and make sure that we've hit every single bullet point on there. And that kind of speaks to the whole imposter syndrome, like where we have to be completely 100% qualified to feel that we should be there. And that if there's knowledge that we don't have, then maybe we shouldn't. And I think recognizing that everybody doesn't know everything, and that's common across the board. So not to focus on what you don't know and what you think that you should know. Focus on what you do know. Focus on what you can bring to the table. And I don't think necessarily it's the fake it till you make it kind of thing, but you can fake that confidence that you think that you do have important things to say, that you should be there, and not to come in with a pretending to know everything. Like that's where being curious in every single job that you do, whether or not you're qualified or not, and asking those questions and gaining knowledge. This is where start reaching out to other people and say, hey, I was just on a meeting with you and I still had some follow-up questions and I wasn't really sure what these acronyms were that people were throwing around. People want to talk about themselves. People want to share what they know. So if you come at that from a point where you're trying to learn, you don't have to worry about being an imposter. You look like somebody that's curious and interested in other people.
So imposter syndrome is so interesting because I think it's for me, right? And I'll just give imposter syndrome. I struggle with because I just I like to psych myself out of it by saying, as long as I know what I'm supposed to know, as long as I'm the subject matter expert in what I'm supposed to know, it would be crazy for someone to expect me to know as much as they do about their subject. So when I think about it that way, is I'll never be like, when it comes to me, I'll always know my stuff. And it's okay if I don't know the other things because there are people that do. So I can be nervous, right? I could be a little jittery about, oh my goodness, I have to present, but I know what I know. And I think going into spaces and believing in what you know and being comfortable in what you know absolutely changes whether you belong there or not, because you proved it, right? By what you prepared for. So that's how I psych myself out of imposter syndrome. Or just, imagining everybody in their underwear when you're presenting. I don't know if that's ever worked for anyone, but I've heard advice about those types of things. So I'm going to do a little lightning round. What advice would you give to your younger self? I'm going to need an answer from everyone. What advice would you give to your younger self? And if you want to break it down, maybe there's an age that needed a certain amount, certain advice, right? What age? Like at 15, you needed different advice from when you were 21 or 25. So if you want to find an age and say, this version of me needed this advice, what would you do?
I could go first. I feel like this is advice I still tell myself, to be honest with you. And I feel like it, based on what you were asking, it's every part of my life. Everyone that said anything around the last question was really great, because I think it's something I struggle with as well. But I would tell myself to listen to my gut. I'm my biggest advocate, and I often shy away from letting opportunities pass by because of it. And I fear of taking chances and making mistakes. More importantly, of making mistakes. I would tell myself to push away from those fears of being judged, or not feeling like I'm the not even smartest person to be there, that I'm not even smart enough to be in that room with other people, and not allowing the unknown to control my decisions. Because I think for a long time, I've allowed that. I'm scared of taking chances because I'm afraid of failure. And I think as you progress in life, failure is just natural. And it's not necessarily the failing part, but it's how do you grow from it? And I think I focused so long on just the failure of it and not doing well, or not looking like I know what I'm doing, that I've let it control a lot. So I think of more recent, I've been taking this advice of I just needed, if it feels right, it's right. And if I do make a mistake, then it's okay. I'm going to get up and keep going, because that's been, the last, 39 years of my life, I've been doing that, and I'm here and I'm doing well. So not letting the little things control too much of what it's going to impact. Because at the end of the day, I've learned that it's not, and I'll be okay.
I love that, Rita. Also, Kim in the chat loves it too. She said, yes, Rita, yes. Rachel, Jess.
I could go. I think that at any given moment, so you're talking about, segmenting different portions of your career, but I think this can be overarching for everything. At any given moment, there's always a balance of needs, right? So more money, more autonomy, flexibility, more development and learning. If you are 22, more money is probably really important. If you are a new mother, more money may be less important than more autonomy and more flexibility. So I think that you have to, to Rita's point, understand yourself and understand your needs at any point in your career stage, and realize that when 2 out of 3 outweigh the other, then maybe it's time to make a change, or whether that be at the company you're at, or the role that you're in, or your own outside work development, or whatever. But you may need something else to kind of re-spark your energy and enthusiasm. And I've definitely experienced that over time in different capacities over my career development. So I guess, make sure you're fulfilled in the necessities that you need at any given moment in your career. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it is hard. And, in time, a lot of change comes, and change is not easy, but change generally helps with growth. And, again, use the resources that are at your disposal. People first, in my opinion, leading back to the initial moment, the initial reason of this conversation, eyes and ears open. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to help and willing to listen. And you can take a lot of stuff in from the people you're not even seeking out.
That's great. I love that so much, Rachel. I think for me, if I were to go back to my younger self, I would tell me to hold on to my mentors more as I left jobs. Because a lot of times I was just finding mentors at the organization that I was at. I was kind of making that connection. And then especially when I would leave from the agency side over to the sales side, I felt bad about leaving the previous job. And so I wouldn't continue to kind of follow up, because it's like, well, I'm not working for you anymore. And I think that I've learned as the years go on that mentors are people that care about you as a person, not your role at that organization. And I wouldn't feel so kind of uncomfortable with continuing to follow up and trying to take, more insights from them throughout my career. And then dating myself, I didn't really know about Outlook and calendars, and that just throwing time on people's calendar and putting a reoccurring meeting. I was very in the organic kind of stage of mentorship, where I would just swing by their office or talk with them there, and not kind of devote that time to put on their calendar. And now I've got 4 different mentor meetings on my calendar at any given point, whether I'm the mentee or the mentor. And that really helps, because those appointments can move. I'm not like locking myself in, but I'm at least moving that appointment versus just forgetting to follow up. And now it's been 6 or 8 months and I haven't made contact with a person. So going back in time, 25 years, I would say learn Outlook better.
That's how I feel about Excel. And I'll just like my piece is I would tell myself not to speak in absolutes. Like when I was younger, I'd be like, I'd never do this. I don't want to do that. Like there's things where I'm like, hey, that was a smart move. But there are other things where I was like, if I was a little more open-minded, right, I would have had different opportunities in front of me. But so often we get really pigeonholed to this is what I want to do. So I'd never look anywhere else. I thought I was going to be in higher ed forever. And I was like, corporate, never. And then I get to a space where I'm like, no, corporate's actually pretty great, right? So just being open-minded and not shutting down things I'm not aware of. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the chats. I just want to acknowledge people gave suggestions about organizations. Toastmasters was on here. So if you're looking for just a space to connect with other people, Meetup has great groups you can join and network without having to leave the house or in person. Somebody said recruiters make great mentors. This is true, depending on what you need. And from there, I'll just say I want to thank you so much, Rita, Rachel, and Jess, for joining us today and sharing such fantastic advice. And thanks for all of you who turned into the discussion. As a reminder, we'll be sending the recording of today's events, along with resources to learn more about opportunities at Ampersand. In the meantime, be sure to check out Ampersand's profile and jobs on Fairygodboss. Also, we'd love to hear your feedback to help us improve future events. Please head to Typeform tab on the right side of your screen to share your thoughts in a 1-minute survey. Thank you, everyone, so much. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ayana.
Thank you.